My name is Stephen Davis. I am the Executive Director and founder of Academics Without Borders.
My name is Karl Strobbe. I'm a family doctor. I'm the Regional Assistant Dean for McMaster's Niagara Medical Campus, and I operate a project in Nepal for Academics Without Borders.
The gap that we fill is that we have found out that a lot of developing countries lack the experts and professionals that they need for their development and are not capable of doing the research necessary for the development. And those people have to be educated at universities. So we're helping them build capacity at their institutions so the countries can have the experts and professionals and do the research for development. We wait until the institutions in the developing world contact us to tell us that they need this or this or this. We then ask them to fill out a project proposal which specifies the needs that they have, the activities they wish to engage in, which us to engage in. They also specify the kind of volunteer that they wish to have and the contribution that they're going to make towards the expenses of the project. It's extremely important for us to have stakeholders involved in it and to have the institutions be the originators and the drivers of the changes that take place. They're the leaders, we're there to help. But what's important for us is that these institutions take the responsibility themselves for the changes in their country. It's their country after all. They want their country to develop. They want to improve the lives of their citizens, the education of their young people. And I think that what we have to do is put that at the forefront. Countries differ one from another. We have no idea of the complexities that occur in these countries. They know better than we do what those complexities are, what their capacities are, what their needs are. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking for.
My own personal philosophy in development and global health is that projects can only be sustainable if my role is helping other people achieve their goals. And so to the extent that I can help, I'm able to assist, but ultimately this is their work, their project, and I provide what assistance I can. And that's why we're aligned very well in terms of what I do and Academics Without Borders, a very similar philosophy. Certainly. So in terms of support for projects, Academics Without Borders provides invaluable support, not just in terms of financially supporting travel, but in terms of putting in place a framework for planning. So ensuring that there's deliverables, that it's clear why people are going, how long they're going to be there, who's responsible for what. A report is submitted at the end to allow for continual improvement of the project, and all of our safety concerns are dealt with, so in terms of immunizations and visas and all that sort of thing, along with evacuation insurance, and that's not a small thing, and Academics Without Borders is actually very active in getting people out of dangerous situations in countries that they find themselves in. So the overall framework and project support is invaluable. Beyond that, the value to me in terms of engaging in the work all comes from the time spent on the ground and creating relationships with colleagues in developing countries. And sharing ideas, coming up with joint projects that we can do together. At the end of the day, together we can do a lot more than either of us can by ourselves. So the notion of actually going in and doing something in another country really requires their involvement, and I come out the richer. And all of my project experience, and also those that I work with, have found exactly the same thing. It's not a trite saying that we gain more than we contribute. Every minute is worthwhile. I could make the case for doing this from a completely selfish viewpoint, that the time and the money and everything else that I invest in this is well worthwhile and helps to provide professional and personal development that one cannot get anywhere else.
Let me just add to the last point that Karl made. One of the things that we have found out discussing this kind of activity is that people tell us it has improved them professionally in their teaching and the way that they do their research. And I think that's very important. It's not just that they become, quote unquote, better people or that it's life-changing, but professionally it makes a difference to them. And in turn, it makes a difference to their institutions. So now, one of the things that we should think about is that what they're doing is an extension of what they do in their home institutions. They're just helping colleagues that happen to be in another country. And they're their colleagues, after all. That's one of the motivations that I have. These are my colleagues in another country. I would help a colleague across Canada. I help a colleague in Liberia. Well, what you have to remember, just let me repeat the question. We're called Academics Without Borders, and there seems to be movements in various parts of the developed world for a new kind of nationalism, a pulling back, people wanting to be behind walls, if you will, to use that kind of metaphor. People who are uncomfortable or afraid of immigrants, don't like the kind of diversity that's going on in their countries. Well, I look at the world in a different way. I see our common humanity. We, after all, are all of us human beings, whatever continent that we live in. We are not the same, that's quite obvious. There are differences, but there are commonalities, and deep commonalities that we have to recognize across the world. Most importantly for us, we're working with universities. The very nature of universities are organizations, institutions without borders. Universities cannot think of themselves behind walls. Research that they do spans the world. The particular field that I work in, my specialty was philosophy of language, and I've given talks in Japan, in China, in many parts of the world, where I have great commonality with my colleagues. Again, they're my colleagues. So universities don't have these borders, and so that's the kind of thing that we're doing, and that's why we're without borders to a certain extent.
So you're asking what I think about Canada's place in this borderless world. I think that projects like this, the work that Academics Without Borders supports, will continue. It's not government funded, it's supported by donations, and certainly participation in this kind of work stands against some of the retrenchment and setting up of walls. That's sort of one way to look at it. I think another way of looking at it is that participants actually themselves role model for others the idea, not of globalization of trade, but certainly that knowledge and expertise really has no borders. It didn't when we had more conservative governments and trade borders in the past, and it doesn't now, and it won't in the future. Another way of looking at this, I suppose depending on the project, some of the projects that Academics Without Borders supports, including mine, they provide invaluable support, but I lead a team of individuals, and I'm pretty sure that if somebody said you shouldn't do this, they would decide for themselves whether this is something that they want to do. So I think institutions they have a certain role to play, but ultimately we're all comprised of individuals, and individuals in our country still have freedom to do what they want.
Let me just say a bit about Canada or any country. We are a country, we do have borders. Canada has borders, and it doesn't allow anybody just to come in and set up house in Canada. It controls its borders, and it seeks influence in the world for various reasons, to export, to extend its values, and so forth and so on. But one of the ways of doing this is by helping others. When you help others, and you're from a particular country, they're going to look favorably on that country that has helped them when it comes to doing various things with them, like trade. So it's in the interest of countries like Canada, or any country, to do these sorts of things. And we know full well that these sorts of things will continue to go on beside these borders being built. It serves those countries' interests.